I want to share with you guys something that God did for me in 1988 and that's going to lead into some events that happened after that time. Excuse me. Late in 1988, around September, I got saved. Someone shared the gospel with me, and I gave my life to Christ. And it seems that every time God does something amazing for me in my life, he does it around September. That's the month of my birthday. So September 1988, I gave my life to Christ and I was saved. Now, I was married and I had 3 children. When you get saved, your life does not stay the same. If it does, something is wrong. Because God changes you. He doesn't leave you the way he found you. So he'd started to change me straight away, really. As soon as I was saved, the whole world looked completely different. It was as if I'd been living in a place of darkness, and all of a sudden I could see. I could see things for what they really were. And that's because he does open your eyes, and you do see the world the way it really is. And the longer you're saved, the more he reveals to you. Now, joy filled my heart. I was just on flying high. Couldn't believe what God had done for me. And I changed a lot of the things that I used to do. I stopped doing. But my husband used to enjoy doing those things with me. Flirting and, drinking and just getting drunk and doing those sort of things. I just couldn't do it anymore, and I didn't want to do it anymore. Now, by about 1990, my husband had probably decided, this is not for me anymore, and he decided he was going to leave the marriage. Look, he didn't actually tell me that he was going to do that. What he did do, which I didn't realise at the time was in any way suspicious, he started selling off our property. He sold our boat, which we'd spent about $13,000 buying it. I don't know what happened to the money. He sold the boat and kept the money. He sold off other things as well, bits and pieces that he could flog, he did. And then July 1991, I'd gone off to church like usual, but this particular day he did not let me take my 2 daughters with me to church. So I went off to church with my son, and when we came home from church, we found that the house had been ransacked. First I thought it had been broken into, but then I walked through the house and I realised, his wardrobe, all his clothes were gone. Then I found that, every photo of him had been ripped out of our photo albums, and that was one of my things that I just loved doing, was taking family photos and creating memories that we could look back on. Well, it was heartbreaking when I looked through those photo albums to see that what he had done was to take every single photo of him out of the family albums, every single one. Now, that would become a problem for me because he'd taken off with the kids, my 2 daughters. I had no idea where they were, and all I could find was a note on the calendar saying, I'll be back for the rest of our things, R. And his name being Robin, so R for Robin. Well, after all, years of being married to him and having kids with him, and this is how he leaves. Very big surprise. Now, realising that he'd taken off with my daughters, my heart was just breaking. He'd ripped my heart out. And I had to find those girls. I had to find where they were, and I had no idea. I called the pastor, he'd come down, he gave me some advice which I followed, And I stayed up all that night to pray, to seek God's help, because this was an overwhelming situation and not knowing where even to begin. I really needed God. So that night, I can mark it now as the night where I learned how to pray. I didn't really pray before this day. I really did not know what prayer was until this night, when I stayed up all night. I was not about to go to sleep. I really pleaded with God, and I found that I was getting very specific with what I needed God to do. Like, where is my husband? Bring my husband out. Show me where my girls are. Help me get my girls back. I can't remember exactly now to retell the sort of prayer I was praying, but you can imagine that if I needed to get my girls back, I needed God to do specific things. So that's how I prayed. Now, the next day, I made my way to the solicitor's office, and to my anguish, he said, "Unless you can tell me where your husband is, I can't do anything for you." So he said, "Look, go away for half an hour and then come back." So that's what I did. His office happened to be just across the road from the City Park in Launceston, Tasmania. And so I walked across the road to the park, and I decided I'm just going to plead with God again. So I was getting pretty desperate by this stage. I thought, maybe I won't get my girls back. Maybe I have lost them and I will never see them again. So I was pleading with God. I lifted my arms up to God, to the heavens, and I was crying out loud to God, "God, bring Robin to me. Bring him to me. I don't know where he is. I don't know where he's taken the girls. Where are they? Please bring him to me. I need to have him come to me, because I don't know where to go to reach him." So this is what I did for half an hour, and I didn't care who heard me. I didn't care if anyone thought I was a crazy woman. I was a bit of a crazy woman, because I had just lost 2 daughters. They were only 4 and 3 years old. So these are my precious girls. So half an hour was up, so I decided we'd better head back to the solicitor's office. And my son and I were standing at the lights, just waiting for the lights to go green. And I noticed across the road was a blue van, and it was our blue van. And that was my husband in that car. I ran across the road. I didn't even stop to check if cars were coming. I just ran across the road, tried to wave him down, but he looked as if he was going to keep going. And I saw the back of the van. I thought, no, he's not going to stop. But to my surprise, he did stop. So I ran up to the driver's side window. He wound it down and talked to me. And we arranged to meet that evening at 7 o'clock at our home. So I ran off to the solicitor's office, and to my surprise, he had actually run out of the office, was on the pavement looking for me. Now, I don't know how come he was out there. Maybe he'd heard me, I don't know, but he was out there, and I was just so happy that I could say to him, I've got a time, I've got a place where I know my husband is going to be this evening. And he was just as happy as I was, I think. So he made the arrangements for the warrant to be executed, and he said to me, before you let your husband in, ring the police. They're going to be on standby waiting for your call. So that's what I made sure I was going to do. So that evening I'm waiting for my husband to come, knock on the door, and before he'd come, I'd actually found one photo of him that he'd missed, and it was a pretty good photo, 5 by 7 inches photo, and that's the photo I used to give to the police so that they knew what he looked like. So that was a good thing. I don't know how he missed that photo, but he did. So my husband comes eventually and knocks on the door, and I let him in. He's very confident. He's super confident, actually. And he whacks one leg up on the coffee table. He's got a clipboard in his hand, and he's reading me the riot act. I'm sitting down on the couch looking up at him, probably looking very vulnerable. And he says, well, maybe you might see the kids in 6 months. And this is July. And 6 months, that's an extraordinarily long time not to see your daughters, your little girls. So I'm thinking, I don't know what he's thinking. And eventually there's another knock at the front door. And I said to him, look, I'll just see who that is. And off I went. I opened the door, and the 2 policemen came in and made a beeline for my husband. And they said, are you Robin Allen Varant? And by this stage now, he was looking very uncomfortable, and he looked to me as if he was going to run. But the police had cornered him, both of them, and they served him with the warrant and said, you have 7 days to return the children. So he was in a very big hurry to get out of the house. Now, he had driven up in our van. It was like a people mover van. But the van was in my name. It was registered to me. He had taken off with it, and he'd driven up with it. And he'd gotten into the car. I'd run out with the police officers, and I'm saying to them, stop him, because that's my car. That's not his car, that's my car. And the police said, yes, well, we checked the registration when we came up, and yes, it is. It's registered to her. So you need to get out of the van and, give me the keys. And so I got the van back. Now, we had another car that was in the garage, just a smaller car, but that was also registered in my name. So this put my husband in a very awkward situation. He had already been humiliated by having to give up the van, which obviously he wanted. It was worth more than the other car. And his arrogance has turned to humiliation. Now, he runs off to the garage, and I say to the police, stop him, don't let him take the other car. That's in my name too. But the police were sort of looking at my husband and thinking, well, this poor guy, not knowing the kind of person they were dealing with here, he needs a car, So they say to me, well, he needs a car to go, to get out of here with. So I give in to their pleas on his behalf, and I let him take off with the other car. Now, this ended very well, because 6 days later I had my girls back. Now, if you tried to do something like this without God, I don't think it would end as well as my story has ended. I had my daughters back, and my husband, well, I knew what he was now, and I couldn't trust him. So if you find yourself in a situation, an impossible situation, where it's only going to be by God's intervention that your situation is going to be overturned and into something less tragic than what my situation could easily have turned into, seek God. Go to Him in prayer and ask Him for His help. Tell Him exactly what you need, and He will help you. He loves you, and He wants to be a father for you. That's who He is. He has a father's heart. Yes, He is God Almighty, but He has a father's heart that loves us. So I leave you with this testimony of what God did for me in 1991, and my children are still with me. So, and I will tell you a little bit more in another video of other things that God did for me in my journey as a Christian.